Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of my scratch tutorial series. My name is DJ TLM, you're watching DJ TLM TV, and I'm starting from the basics, and if you're new to scratching, make sure that you check part 1 and 2 before you get into this video. Now, if you have been checking the last episodes, in part 1, we did the baby scratch, and in part 2, we moved on to drops and baby scratches with drops. Drops being that you let the sound play. So I hope you've been practicing those moves because they are essential. They're the fundamentals of scratching. And now it's time to take that same move one step further. We're only using the player, again, just the player. We're gonna get into the mixer, the fader from the next video on. But now I'm only using my turntable, or you could be using your CDJ or controller. Oh, I have to mention this though, because a couple of people had problems with the scratches and the platter was not responding the right way. You have to make sure that your CD player or your controller is in vinyl mode. A lot of controllers have a special mode where the platter turns into what the turntable does, and it allows you to manipulate the actual movement of the track. If the platter is not in vinyl mode, or in some cases it's called scratch mode, when you're touching the platter, all you're doing is actually changing the pitch of the song a little bit. You're only giving it a nudge, but you're not able to pull it back and push it forward. So it has to be in vinyl mode or scratch mode. All right. If you've been practicing the baby scratch move, you've been doing the forward and backward movement. When you do that move, you're doing it in one tempo. You have the same tempo forward as backward. So what I want you to try and do now is change this up a little bit, because if you change the tempo, you change the pitch. If you do it faster, it will become a higher pitch. If you do it slower, it will become a lower pitch. But when I'm showing it this way, I'm still using one single tempo when I'm doing a scratch, either a fast tempo or a slow tempo or mid tempo. What I want you to do is try and incorporate a couple of faster and slower movements inside your normal scratch so that you have different pitch sounds within one baby scratch. I'll show you. First, I'll show you a couple of faster moves in the baby scratch. Or slower. As you can tell, it changes the pitch and adds a whole new variation and creates a new pattern. So you're still doing a baby scratch, but because you're changing the tempo of your movement, you're changing the pitch and changing the scratch. This is also a very important practice for more advanced scratch techniques, because a lot of times when you're doing more advanced scratch techniques, you're not just going to be moving it forward and backward in one tempo. Your hands are going to do all sorts of different stuff in different tempos, and this is a very good way to practice that. And I showed you one example, but you could try anything, any different pattern. Just try and add a couple of faster or slower moves within your baby scratch. Time to move on to the next scratch, and this one is called the tear scratch. Let's take a closer look right now. To do the tear scratch, you're going to start the same way you would start your basic baby scratch. You're going to move the platter forward. With the baby scratch, you would now make a single motion and pull it back. But with the tear scratch, you're going to divide that motion into 2 separate steps. So it's 1 forward, 2 back. That's all the tear scratch, but start with that slow movement. Because I'm dividing that backwards motion into 2 separate steps, you also create 2 separate sounds. So where with the baby scratch you would have simply 2 sounds, you now turn it into 3 sounds with the tear scratch. I was doing the dividing on the backwards motion, but you could also apply the same technique to the forward motion and turn that into 2 steps and take 1 back. So that will be 2, 1. Same technique, only now you're doing it on the forward motion. You could take it even one step further and do 2 steps forward and 2 back. But start by doing 1, 2. And take it really slow because it is a different move and it's a little bit harder to get the hang of it and make it flow like your baby scratch, because the baby scratch is just one simple back and forth motion. And here you have to divide it into 1, 2, or 2 forward, 1 backwards. It is a little bit more difficult. Practice that without a beat when you start out. Definitely practice that without a beat. Once you really feel you have a little bit more control, then you can try to do it over a beat and make sure that you keep the rhythm going. Now, the cool thing about this is you can use this technique and combine it with the baby scratch. And of course, you can also use the drops the same way you use them with the baby scratch and do a drop after you do your tear scratch. So you can start with a tear and end it by letting the sound play. I'm going to give you a couple of examples where you can combine the baby scratch and the tear scratch, and after that I'll also add some drops. Alright guys, that's more than enough info for one video. I want you to go and practice all these moves. I want you to keep on practicing that baby scratch because it is fundamental. But this time around, incorporate doing some of the faster and slower movements within the baby scratch to change the pitch. Practice the drops and the baby scratches with the drops and work on that tear scratch move because it is a new and different motion than just going forward and backward. Now you have to add steps. But once you get the hang of that, that will really help you for future, more advanced scratches. And just imagine, we're only using one player. We're not even using the mixer and the fader yet. And already you have quite a lot of different combinations you could make with just the baby scratch and changing the pitch in that and adding that tear scratch as well. So next time we're going to use the mixer and we're going to add fader moves as well. So stay tuned for that. But until then, practice, practice, practice. Especially if you're starting out, practice these fundamental techniques. I'll be back real soon. Like the video if you enjoyed this info. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any videos. Make sure to check djtlmtv.com and I'll be back real soon. Peace.